Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into Mark Manson's radically different take on how to live a good life. And trust me, it completely flips everything you think you know on its head. So let's kick things off with a story. A story that just completely rewrites the script on what success even means. It starts with this really strange epitaph from the writer Charles Bukowski. Don't try. I mean, what on earth is that supposed to mean, right?
You know, for most of his life, Bukowski was pretty much the dictionary definition of a failure. He had this dead-end job filing letters at a post office, and he spent whatever money he had on booze and gambling. For 30 years, his writing was rejected by just about everyone, which left him in this deep, alcohol-fueled depression.
Well then, at age 50, some small publisher finally decided to take a chance on him, and Bukowski went on to sell millions of books. But here's the real twist. His success didn't come because he was determined to be a winner. No, it came from the fact that he knew he was a loser, he totally accepted it, and he wrote about it with this brutal, unflinching honesty. And this story, right here, perfectly illustrates the paradox at the heart of our explainer today. See, unlike Bukowski, our modern culture is completely and totally obsessed with these unrealistically positive expectations. I mean, everywhere you look, you're just bombarded with messages to be more, smarter, richer, sexier, happier. This constant pressure to be perfect, that's what Manson calls the tyranny of positivity. And all this relentless positivity, it creates this vicious cycle that Manson calls the feedback loop from hell. It's that horrible feeling of feeling bad about feeling bad. You get anxious, and then you start getting anxious about why you're so anxious, which, of course, just makes you even more anxious. And this is the trap, right? Your brain essentially turns on itself. It just amplifies all these negative feelings simply because you've been taught that you shouldn't be having them in the first place. So you're not just feeling bad, you're feeling bad about yourself for feeling bad. This leads to what the philosopher Alan Watts called the backwards law. And it's a total mindfuck. The basic idea is that the more you desperately chase after feeling better, the less satisfied you actually become. Why? Because pursuing something only reinforces the fact that you don't have it. Just think about it for a second. The more you desperately want to be rich, the more poor and unworthy you feel, no matter how much money you actually have. The more you chase some ideal image of physical attractiveness, the more you end up focusing on every little perceived flaw, which just makes you feel uglier in the process. And yeah, the more you desperately want to be happy and loved, the lonelier and more afraid you become. So the crucial point here is that this entire approach, this constant chasing, it's fundamentally broken. It's a great question, isn't it? If pursuing the positive always backfires, then what are we supposed to do? Well, the answer lies in shifting our focus completely, away from happiness and towards something that's way more tangible. The secret, according to Manson, isn't a life without problems, because let's be real, that's impossible. Instead, a good life is a life full of good problems. See, happiness isn't something you just find. It's an activity. It's the feeling you get from actually solving the problems that you choose to take on. And this, right here, gets to the absolute core of Manson's philosophy. A good life isn't determined by the pleasures you want, because hey, everyone wants pretty much the same good stuff. A good life is determined by the struggles you're willing to endure to get there. Manson uses his own life as a perfect example. He used to fantasize about being a rock star, the result. But he wasn't willing to embrace the painful process, the endless hours of practice, the logistics, hauling gear, playing to basically empty rooms. He realized he didn't really want the struggle. He just wanted the victory. And, well, life just doesn't work that way. Your struggles are what determine your successes. Okay, so how does this actually work in practice? It all comes down to two really simple things: the values you choose to live by and the metrics, or the standards, you use to measure whether you're actually living up to those values. And this story brilliantly illustrates the point. Take two musicians, both kicked out of legendary bands. Dave Mustaine of Megadeth measured his success against Metallica, and even though he sold over 25 million albums, he still felt like a failure.
Then there's Pete Best, who got kicked out of the Beatles. He eventually changed his metric to value a loving family and a simple life, and he found he was way happier for it. It wasn't their circumstances, it was their chosen metrics that defined their happiness.
Manson argues that a lot of us unconsciously choose these poor or shitty values that create problems we can never solve. Things like pleasure, which is just a temporary side effect, not a goal, or material success, which has seriously diminishing returns, or always needing to be right, which means you can never learn. And yeah, even staying positive, which is really just a way of avoiding reality. These values just keep us stuck. So what's the ultimate tool to help us cut through all the noise and choose better, more meaningful values?
Well, it's the one thing we spend pretty much our entire lives trying to avoid thinking about.
The cultural anthropologist Ernest Becker argued that this death terror is what really drives us. Confronting our own mortality, as terrifying as that is, it forces us to cut through all the trivial, superficial stuff that dominates our lives and really focus on what's going to have a lasting impact. And so, the crucial point we'll leave you with is this. When you finally stop avoiding this final, unavoidable question, you can finally start choosing the struggles and the values that give your life real meaning. Because in the end, what you give a fuck about is what you leave behind.